I'm excited to have Mike Lorenzo joining us again today. Our topic today is heaven, and the idea behind this year's Family Faith Formation is that we're thinking of heaven as our eternal destination, and the classes that we'll be having this year and the lessons that you'll be doing at home will be all about the signposts that Jesus left for us about how to get there. So it all ties together. For those of you who are going to 11 o'clock Mass, I have a little bit of a spoiler alert, but it's funny how the Holy Spirit works, because Father Chris's sermon is actually all about that final destination and about being intentional. You can kind of drift off to, where you want to go. You can kind of drift off to heaven and hope you get there, or you can be really, really intentional and decide that, okay, these are the things that I'm going to do, these are the choices I want to make with my kids and my family, and that's how we're going to get to heaven. So I just think it's really cool how it all tied together. A lot has changed for Mike since he was here last year. First, we had the pleasure of his wife joining our staff, the Director of Youth and Adult Ministry. This is Sophie. Sophie with her mom, Carrie, from Colorado, with Mike's dad, John, right, from Texas. Okay, so we have an international audience, but people from all over. Yeah, so we're excited.
Texas is another country.
Have you ever been to Colorado? Oh my gosh.
That's in the Burlington. It's beautiful. In the course of actually less than a year, Mike has been through pretty much, probably the 3 most major life changes ever. Really not even a year, probably even less than that. He changed jobs. I'll let him tell you about that. He was the pastoral associate at St. John the Evangelist in St. John. He has now gone and done a total 180, but he's really enjoying that too, so it's cool. New job, new home. They moved from St. John to Crown Point, and it's going to be a father around Christmas time this year. We're expecting their first baby. So without further ado, please make welcome.
All right, hey all. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. I realize I'm wearing the same shirt I wore last time. This is my talking shirt. I think last time I talked about being a mess with you guys. Don't worry, I'm still very much a mess. So if you're still working on that, don't worry. I realized I had a big oil stain on my pants when I walked in today, and I was like, "Oh, it's great! I'm gonna be in front of a couple hundred people. It's no problem." So, like Chris said, it's been a busy year for my wife and I. We've done all sorts of things, and we're just now starting to sort of come back into a more calm period, and then we're going to have a kid, and nothing's going to be calm ever again. So I'm excited. Like Chris said, I got a whole crew with me today, so I really hope I don't suck, because they're all here. But it's just been a really good weekend for us. I've driven to the airport a couple times. It's just awesome. So fun in Chicago. So I'm really excited to get this going with y'all. This is the great exclamation point of my weekend, getting to hang out with my friends at St. Teresa of Avila for a nice talk. Love his beard. Love your Colorado shirt. It's starting off great. So I actually reviewed my game tape last year, like Peyton Manning, and or any professional athlete probably. But I saw that I moved around like crazy last time, and I don't think I'm going to be able to avoid that this time too, because you spent 2 minutes with me and you know what a crazy extrovert I am. But I had a really cool system that I used for my presentation last time called Prezi, and it moved around and it was all fancy, but I kept having to go back there to change the slides, and so you couldn't do that with Prezi. You could use like a little clicker. So PowerPoint, it's not as cool, but I still think it'll be okay, and that way I won't be walking back and forth to the computer. Anyways, talking about heaven today, as Chris said. Talking about heaven, and I tell you what, I get to experience a little slice of heaven every day. We actually took those pictures for our Christmas card a couple years ago. We like spelled out Merry Christmas or something. It was cute. But just love seeing that. So there's a little bit of heaven right there for you. And like I said a second ago, my dad's here, and I've certainly been able to experience heaven through my dad in a lot of ways. He's in a lot of ways the guy that set me up on the way. We talk a lot. I don't know if you've been told this before, because you have kids in religious education. You're the primary catechist of your kid. You ever hear that? A lot. You probably hear it a lot. Parents, the primary catechist of your kid. And I got to say, I worked in ministry for about 8 years. Now I work in spreadsheets and QuickBooks. But in those 8 years of ministry, working with kids, working with adults, we could have the best programs and we could have the coolest things, but if the kid wasn't able to see their parents modeling faith for them in the home, it probably wasn't going to make too much of a difference. And you know, me, just a real quick one. I know I met with a lot of y'all last year, but there's probably some people in here that don't know me as well. I wasn't raised Catholic. I didn't grow up anything. When people ask me what I converted from, I just say unhappiness. It's kind of my little line. And it's very true. I was very unhappy, and I think my dad would tell you he was also very unhappy when he came back to the church. And I'm really glad he did. He ended up going on a men's retreat that's a lot like church. I know probably a lot of you guys have done that. And that was a huge turning point for him. And he came back and he was this different guy, and I wanted what he had. And it took me a number of years, but I was lucky enough to experience Christ in an extremely real way right before I went to college in the Eucharist. And that's what set me up, for now. It's been a long journey. It's still a long journey. I'm still very much working on it. But it all started with my dad's invitation and my dad's example. And so if you get nothing out of this talk, please know that your kids are watching you. Your kids, they're looking, they're watching, they're seeing, are you praying, are you really taking this stuff seriously? And that's providing an amazing example. I wouldn't say that I was jumping into mass doing cartwheels, when I was with my dad, but I did definitely see that guy's got something that I want, and I want that. So he doesn't know this, but I actually found this really old picture of us. That I wanted to show. We're talking about heaven, we're talking about the journey. A picture of me and my dad on the road. That's us in Texas. I'm just kidding. That's not us. That's not us at all. There's my mom back there. We're actually, it's funny because I said this last time, but I'm from San Antonio. It's a city of 2 million people. This is not what it looks like at all. Never worn a cowboy hat. But there was a time I remember when we did go pick bluebonnets, like the Texas state flower for my mom. And I was always a really cautious kid, and I was like freaking out because it's illegal to pick bluebonnets. And so we were on the side of the road of the highway, and my dad's like, "Oh, let's pick some bluebonnets." I was like, "Oh, Christ, come on. Trying to do it real quick. And I thought like a SWAT team was going to come down. But so that kind of happened. It's just nothing like that. My dad's actually from New York. Kind of the opposite of that. I grew up in Mexico City. But yeah, he's lived in Texas now for what, 25 years, something like that? A long time. So he was not from Texas, but he got there as fast as he could. That's what we like to say. And he's a real contradiction. For one, he doesn't own a gun, doesn't own a cowboy hat, doesn't drive a pickup truck. He's a real no boots either, yeah, believe it or not. I actually grew up riding horses, so that's pretty Texas, but it was English dressage. Also kind of the opposite of Texas. We like our contradictions, so that's part of why I named this talk what it is, because I like some contradictions. This is not an original thought of mine, this is an old song that I thought for the longest time was Hank Williams, like everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. I thought that's how it went. That's not how it goes at all. It's really this is like Mississippi Delta players, like Muddy Marbles was singing this song. Like, nobody wants to go to heaven. That's really how it goes. But I love the symbolism behind it, and so that's why I called the talk this. So I'm going to get into this contradiction a little bit more, but I thought I'd start with some wise words, from a good philosopher. I've never talked about heaven before, in front of people. So I was really looking for ideas. Heaven's pretty big. There's a lot of things a lot of directions you can go with heaven. So I sought out some ancient wisdom. No, not him. Not him. That's G.K. Chesterton. He's a little bit more modern. Forgot what I was. No. It's Thomas Aquinas. There it is. Winnie the Pooh. So, a few months ago, my wife, I love all the big violent movies, that swear and curse and there's blood and everything. I love all those movies. My wife really loves, sweet movies. movies, innocent movies that are beautiful and good. And so we went to go see Winnie the Pooh the other day, and I was just excited because I'd get a big thing of popcorn and sit in the dark for a few hours and not think about a new house and a new kid and all this stuff. I could just kind of enjoy my popcorn. But I tell you what, like 5 minutes into this movie, I was shook, like in a good way. You know, growing up, I really admired the work of Mr. Pooh. And, you know, my dad will tell you. Anyways, I hadn't really thought about him in the last few years, you know, because I've been thinking about spreadsheets and QuickBooks. But the first 5 minutes of this movie, I was right back there with Eeyore and Tigger and everybody. The movie's called Christopher Robin. I'm sure you've probably heard of it. It's about Christopher Robin. And it starts with them having a party for Pooh. Or not a party for Pooh, sorry, Pooh's there, but the party for Christopher Robin. And he's leaving. He's going to boarding school. So he's leaving the 100-acre wood, he's leaving his friends. And it's just this beautiful scene. The movie is just shot, you know, there's all this lens flare, and there's this beautiful meadow, and it's just like, oh, it's just beautiful. And your heart is just opening with all this nostalgia. And then he leaves, you know, the woods. He says goodbye to everybody. They give him a cake. And then it goes into this montage of his life after he leaves the wood as he's growing up. And it's rough. He goes to boarding school, and he doesn't like boarding school because he's drawing his pictures, and they're like, no, do math. And you know, then his dad dies, and he's got to be the man of the house. He has no idea how to do that, and then he goes to war, and he fights in World War I. And it's World War II. Either one was horrible. And then he comes back, and some good things happen. You know, he gets married and whatnot. He gets a good job, and then the movie really starts with Christopher Robin, just kind of a regular guy, just like a lot of us. You know, he's got a good, solid job. He's got a beautiful wife, a nice house, and he's miserable, and he's so unhappy. And man, I mean, I'm quaking up a little bit right now. We like see this movie and I'm like sobbing during the movie, like sloppy crying. And then there's another part later on that I start tearing up again. And then we walk out of the theater and I'm okay. And then I get in the car and I start crying again. Because I think this movie just really illustrated the what the world does to us. How, you know, you're a kid, and I feel like you catch glimpses of heaven left and right. You live with the joy and a wonder about things. You have complete trust in your parents. And, you know, I think Christopher Robin in this movie, he forgot that, just like so many of us do. And of course, this is Pooh comes and finds him, and they come back, and, you know, this is them sitting on this log, and he just gives Pooh a hug. Like Pooh says something, you know, silly and stupid and beautiful, like he always does. And they hug him, and he just goes, Pooh, I'm so lost. And I was like, oh, I was bawling again. Because I think it's so true. And when we're talking about heaven, you know, and it was nice to hear Father Chris is going to talk about heaven later, because he can fill in all the real churchy stuff. but I think the first thing with heaven, before you can really, you know, learn, is what we can learn about heaven. And there's only so much we can learn. You need to desire it. You need to want it, because that's what we were all created for. It's within all of our hearts, this desire for our Father, for our home, for this walk that we're on. And, you know, we forget about it. And it's so important that we don't. Jesus talked all the time. There's so many parts in the Gospels about Jesus saying that people need to become more childlike. And I believe this was something that I talked about in my last talk. And I think I talk about this anytime I'm talking about anything. I was talking about the sacraments with y'all last time, I think. Talked about heaven, talked about discipleship, talked about evangelization. It all comes back to this childlike faith for me. You know, because God's Father. That's God's. That's the heart of who He is. And as a Trinity, He's this relationship with the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, that love they have between them. God is all about this relationship between father and child. And that's what he desires for us. And yet we forget this all the time. True faith should be more about hope and joy rather than fear and dread. I think when we talk about heaven, a lot of times it's like, I mean, we all want to go to heaven, right? Everyone wants to go to heaven. I don't know anybody that doesn't. And this is beyond just Catholics. This is everybody. I mean, we hear about heaven all over the place, all the time. But a lot of times, I feel like, and I would certainly count myself in this, is how often am I motivated out of fear more than the other thing. So much of the time we're desiring heaven because we're running away from hell rather than running to heaven. And I think we should flip that, I remember growing up with my dad and my mom. I had a great relationship with my mom too. She's not here, don't worry. But my dad, growing up, he had a toy store. And so that's why I'm so fun. I grew up at a toy store. Just kidding. I'm really not that fun. But because he worked at this toy store and he owned this business, I didn't get to see him a lot. I was always going to daycare, and I hated daycare. I would make myself throw up so I didn't have to go to daycare. I know if y'all experienced that. But one day, so I was getting done with class, first grade, and I was just like walking, going to daycare. The teacher was leading us out, and all the daycare kids had to go to this line, doing this walk of shame. Oh, I'm going to daycare. And then I turn the corner, and then just down the hall, I see my dad, and it's like, it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I just like ran to him. I was so excited. He picked me up, and he hugged me, and he spun me around. And that's what God wants to do to us. That's what I picture heaven being like. You're home. Welcome home. And I think we've lost sight of that joy and that love and that trust that we feel that we feel towards the Father, because the world breaks it out of us. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Secondly, I want to talk about wonder and beauty and mystery. A lot of fluffy words today, but I'm hopeless romantic. And to do that, I want to take the words of another great, this is a real philosopher this time. He's from Texas. Matthew He's a proud Longhorn like myself. He's one of our most distinguished alumni. And he didn't even actually say this. This is from Interstellar, so this is like Christopher Nolan said this. But anyways, you remember that movie Interstellar? I saw it a few years ago. I'm still not sure if I liked it or not. It was either the best movie I've ever seen or it sucked. And he said, we used to look up at the sky and wonder about our place in the stars. Now we just look down, and I put in parentheses at our phones, and worry about our place in the stars. And man, I think that's really true too. Just like how we lose our sense of joy, our sense of trust and hope, I think we can also lose our sense of wonder and mystery and beauty. And that's something that I think that is so awesome about our Catholic faith. It's a mystery. It's so many aspects of it. I mean, we can learn a lot through our reason about our faith. For me, it was always right here, and then I had to connect here to here. I think for a lot of people, it's here to here too. And so our faith definitely speaks to our intellect. It definitely does. But there's always going to come to a point when it just comes down to, do you believe it or do you not? And I think that's, in some ways, I think that's so beautiful. Think about the great stories. I'm an English major. I'm a real liberal arts guy, obviously, so I'm sorry to all you engineers that are like, this is fluff. But the great stories, the great myths, the great legends that we've had for thousands of years, they all speak to this longing in the heart for something beyond ourselves. And when we look up at the stars, I think we catch some of that. When was the last time you did look up at the stars? I know for me, I was going to work out the other day, and it was early in the morning, and it was still dark outside. And in between my house and my garage, for whatever reason, I just stopped and I looked up and I was like, oh my God, the stars, wow. It's incredible. I can't remember the last time I did that. I said earlier, I was a missionary for a year in Ireland, or I don't know if I said that, but I was. And throughout that year, I just felt like when I look back on it, that was 6-7 years ago, and I still don't shut up about it. I talk about it all the time. But when I look back at that year, I just think God just romanced me that whole year. Just all the opportunities that I had to just be surrounded by by beauty, by, I should put some pictures up, but you know what Ireland looks like. Every postcard you've seen of Ireland, that's like what everywhere looks like. Like the Detroit of Ireland still looks beautiful. Like, it really does, it's crazy. You have to spend that whole year just captivated by that wonder, and then, you know, I got out into the world, and you get caught up in things. And it's not like you get caught up in things for bad reasons. You want to be a good parent, you want to be a good spouse, you want to be good at your job so you can be successful, so you can work hard, and be able to relax and whatnot as you grow older. There's a great proverb that I heard one time, maybe you've heard it too, about this old man who's a fisherman in this town. He's got his little boat, and he wakes up and he goes fishing and he catches a little bit and he comes back and he enjoys his family. And there's a man that sees him one day, a guy visiting from out of town, who's a banker, and he says, you know, hey, you know, you could, if you worked a little harder, you know, you could really grow this business. And he's like, no, it's okay. I wake up early in the morning. I go fish for a little bit. I come back. I cook a nice meal for my wife. We take a walk. I play with my kids. It's great. And he's like, well, you know what you could do? If you know, bought a second, worked a little harder, you could buy a second boat. And then if you bought a second boat, you could really grow this business. And you know, he goes on and on about how he could just be really successful. It's like, and then you'd have time, you know, if you wanted, you could just fish a little bit, and then you could go home, and then you could spend time. And it's like, work that hard just to get this thing that you already had.